Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's March 16th, 2023 meeting. Following the guidance issued by the state in 2020 regarding open meeting law, this public meeting is being held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate in this call or participating in the call may do so utilizing the Zoom video technology. The link to the Zoom meeting can be found on our website under meetings and calendars. The first item of business is a roll call vote of the Board of Selectmen. I am Robin Hunter and I am present.
Bob Springett, present.
John Jeffries, present.
Our first item of business this evening is public or citizens' comment. Do we have any citizens' comments? There being none, we are 10 minutes ahead of schedule, let the record note, and we will go to item 1.1, which we are going to let Chief McGowan appoint or recommend the appointment of a new full-time officer. So, Chief
Great.
McGowan.
Good morning, all.
Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I think it's evening, but
Evening.
whatever.
So what time
Anyways.
zone are you in, Chief?
Yeah, where exactly are you?
I am in the Eastern time zone.
That's not,
Which
that's not very,
continent?
that's not answering the question.
I am in the 508 area code. How's that?
We're wondering why
Unfortunately.
we're allowing you to go first this evening.
I know, because I have a connection with Mona. That's why.
Right.
So I'm here to give the board some good news. We've been struggling to find good candidates to hire the last full-time position that the town meeting authorized last year. And I'm very happy to report that Hasnan Ali has decided to come back and work for the town of Dover full-time. Has worked for us back in July of 2020 for about a year as a reserve police officer. In June of 2021, we didn't have a full-time opening, and he took advantage of an opening with the Framingham Police Department. He's been there a couple of years and frankly misses Dover. So a couple of my guys reached out to him, and he and I have been talking quite a bit, and he's willing to transfer to Dover and finish out his career with us. So I'm very happy to hear that. So Has has quite a bit of experience. He worked as a Boston College Police Department police officer from March 2014 up until June 2021. He worked his way up to patrol, then to a sergeant, and then a staff sergeant. He also worked, in addition to Dover part-time, he also worked at the Princeton Police Department part-time. We're thrilled to have him back. He was a great fit. Everybody was disappointed when we didn't have a spot for him when he left back in 2021, and we're really glad to have him back. He's academy trained, ready to go. I think I still have some of his old uniforms that he turned in when he left to go to Framingham, so we should be able to get him plugged in and up and running by the middle of April, which would be great, should the board accept my recommendation.
So, this is a win-win. We don't have to
Oh,
buy new uniforms, and we know and like them. So I can't find any reason not to move forward with your recommendation. I think this is great news because I know how you have struggled to fill some of these full-time positions. So.
Indeed.
It's always good to have a little luck.
Exactly. And that says quite a bit about the culture we've developed with the town of Dover, because Oz has been elsewhere and he knows that this is a good place to work and have a good work-life balance. So he'll be a great fit. We were all disappointed when he left and just as pleased that he's coming back.
The only thing that I'm worried about is I had 2 children at Boston College while he was there. And I'm thinking he may recognize cars that he gave parking tickets to at Boston College. That might not be a good thing.
I think he'll be able to control himself.
Right. I think we can live with that.
Great.
Well, with that, I move to approve the appointment of Officer Hasnan Ali to the Dover Police Department as a full-time officer, subject to the usual stipulations of the police department.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
John Jeffries.
Okay, well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Chief.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
Yeah, moving right along, the next item of business is 1.2. And this is discussion of the intergovernmental agreement between Dover and the Dover Sherborne Regional School District and a vote with respect to that. The business manager, Dawn Fattori, is going to introduce this to us. As you may or may not recall, this is standard practice we've embarked upon for, I think it's over 10 years now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
we haven't done it every year. We had a little break, but this is our second year back after that break.
Right, but what this basically does is it allows both Dover and Sherborne to independently fund their pro rata share of the region's capital. So, you know, instead of, if both towns want to bond it, instead of paying a third set of bonding fees, each town can do it separately along with whatever other bonding they're going to be doing. So it's really a great thing. I believe, I think it's a win-win for the towns. So Dawn, I'll let you go. So
You
that
did all the heavy lifting for us.
Right.
And Beth
Right.
McCoy, our current superintendent, is also joining us this evening. So I think in your packet, we provided you with sort of some information background about the project. And then, of course, the financial statistics of this current year IMA, which we're requesting $1.2 million in total, but Dover's share of that is $647,400. It's a single project, just like last year. We brought forward a large single project to be funded by the towns, where the regional school committee picked up some of the smaller projects with our excess and deficiency funding. We're doing the same this year. That seems to work well. We were able to also, because of the timing of this project, we checked in with our bond attorney, Rick Manley, who actually reviewed the whole document for us. But we also moved the traditional payment date from July 15th to November 5th. Because if you read in the memo, we're looking at a pretty long lead time on this equipment that we will be going out to bid and purchasing, in the next several months, but it won't be ready for us to be able to install until the summer of 24. So based on that, we didn't feel like it was right to have the towns turn over the assessments to us in July, when it would be a little while before we need the money. I'm happy to answer any questions about the project itself. I know Barry presented it Monday evening. If there's any questions about that, I sort of look at bringing what we bring to the selectmen is more the IMA, so the procedural of how you'll pay for the capital. And you do have a copy of the IMA in your packet for your review. It's standard, and the only change this year again is the date that the assessment payment is due on the capital, being November.
and the amount.
And the amount, yes, the amount does change.
Right.
The amount is smaller this year, so maybe that's a plus.
Right. So, just as the board's liaison to capital budgets, I will say that capital budgets approved this capital item. It was contingent upon getting certain information, which Dawn and the schools are already working on. Both the capital budget committees of Dover and Sherborne asked the regional school committee to look at replacing this with a full electric system rather than an electric gas system. And the schools are doing that, and they'll get us all the information.
And we have, and to piggyback on that, any opportunities that we have for green community grants, we are, working with both towns to do that. I know Dover is at its cap right now with a grant that you received for the community center, and we're looking to see if Sherborne has any access. But I think going forward, this will be any projects that we do like this that are green community potential projects. We will, keep that at the forefront and try to do the grant applications to subsidize what the towns have to contribute to these projects.
Right, and there's been like great collaboration between Dover and Sherborne and the region, and everybody's just trying to do the right thing for the town.
Correct.
So there's this, this might be the first time. Is this sort of a path-breaking a collaborative effort between the Capital Budget Committee in Dover and the Capital Budget Committee in
No.
Sherburne as pertains to sustainable green community sort of issues?
Yes, I believe so, but we've worked really closely together on many projects. You know, if you recall the retrofitting of AC in the middle school, that was something that Dover Capital and Sherborne Capital worked really closely on.
Yeah, what I want to make sure is that we're aligned around things like getting rid of fossil fuels and moving over to.
And we are, and you know, both committees along with the region got together and we talked about it, which is to Dawn's point, it's now going to be something that will be on the forefront and will be part of any other bid that comes in. It will
good,
just be,
good.
yeah.
Right. And you know,
Dawn,
Sherburne with they had this with the sustainability coordinator.
Yeah, I know.
Right. She stays in touch with us too, and sort of is the voice in Sherburne for that piece.
Right. You know, for Dover, the capital budgets has really integrated this into
Your members, yeah.
into what we do. And we've been really successful getting grants, which is why we're blocked out for a year or so.
Right.
Dawn, there's going to be questions with regards to the roof projects, solar projects, and obviously with air handlers. So how does this all work together in terms of these separate projects all being all specifically being rooftop projects?
Right. So last year it was the middle school and Lakewood Commons. Those were the buildings that actually had the roof restoration completed.
Right.
These rooftop air handler units are on the high school. If you recall looking at our 5-year capital plan last year, our initial plan was to do the roof restoration at the high school. However, if you look at an aerial view of that and see the amount of equipment on top, and
Right.
knowing that the next year was starting to replace the rooftop units, we actually flipped that so that we can get all that equipment work done prior to going up and doing the roof restoration.
Got it.
We had already determined that none of our buildings at the region are good candidates for solar because of the amount of equipment that are on top of those rooftops. There's just not a good area to do that. So any questions that come up about solar at the region, if we do it in the future, it won't be on the rooftop. It'll be sort of maybe a carport type thing, or somewhere where we have, in the back fields, where there's some open space similar to what you did at the transfer station. So that determination was made that just our buildings themselves are not good candidates for solar.
Got it. And so 2024, the roof, the air handlers go up on the roof, and then
So it'll be the summer of 24. So this summer we actually won't have any
Right.
capital work of this extent going on. It'll be the following summer.
And then do you anticipate the summer of 2025 to have the actual roof?
Exactly.
So town meeting of 2024, ask for the money for the roof and get the money in 25. Have the roof.
The roof restoration project we can do in the same timing. So if we ask for it in May, we'll do the work in the summer.
Got
So
it.
it'll
Okay,
be
so
the
we can
same
ask for the money for the roof in May.
You'll have a year break where we might not be asking for a large building project. What we sort of have on our schedule that could come up in between those two projects is our turf field and the track. And we're working on how we're going to deal with that. But that is what's showing up as the next large project that we would probably come to the town. Then we would go to the roof restoration of the high school.
Got it. So a new field, new track in 24, and then the roof in 25.
Exactly, because that one we do that we can do exactly the same year. It's just this one we won't have the equipment. The lead time on the equipment right now is running 30 to 33 months.
Really?
Yeah.
My
And,
God.
and Dawn, I think it's important that all of this has been on the radar. The region does an excellent job with the on-site insight reports. All these things are flagged. We've known for a while
Mhm.
that they were coming down the pike. The region also doesn't just willy-nilly replace things.
Right.
When it says the useful life is up, you know, they have some great consultants that they work with and their facilities person and Dawn, making sure that the replacement actually needs to get done. And as a matter of fact, the town mirrored the region's process for monitoring capital because it's just been so effective.
Right. So, I think you do too. We use our on-site insight report as our roadmap. So
You were the first to do that.
yeah, well, and that was that was actually at the advice or persuasion of Carol Lisbon, who was
Right, right.
the board as selectman. So she's the one who actually pushed that for the schools, and we actually did it at all 3 districts. And like I always tell school committee when we present capital, it's our roadmap. It doesn't tell us this is exactly when you're going to do it, but it alerts us to when we should start looking at an item based on its useful life, and then we can research. So sometimes it says, especially at Chickering, our useful life may be this year, but we do such great maintenance on our equipment that we can usually push it off. And so we don't necessarily replace everything when it says it needs to be replaced, but we wait and we assess, and we're able to push things out a couple of years. So, but that report makes us look at something and make those determinations rather than waiting for something to fail and then in an emergency situation have to replace items. So it has been a wonderful tool for us. And we, every 5 or 6 years, we actually have it refreshed.
Right.
And so we're probably due for one in the next year or two. The last time we did it was 2017. But I can't say enough about letting that just be a great tool for us in capital planning.
So Don, I just want to add one thing with regards to capital planning and with regards to things that were off balance sheet capital planning items that had historically had the support of DSEF. And Nora Surra Field is probably the shining example that was done by outside.
Right.
Let me finish. That was done outside of schools and outside of, as I said, off balance sheet items. And it has really been disappointing and quite frankly embarrassing that the administration has allowed the DSEF to fold. And these items, these large balance sheet off balance sheet items, are now going to be back in circulation to determine how they're going to be addressed. And it really is disappointing to see that there is not the outside support that there used to be for items like this.
Right. So, but John, to that particular item, it was always the expectation that it was our initial gift, but going forward, it was going to be the responsibility of the region. So it has been sitting in our on-site insight report from once it was installed, because that was sort of the agreement that they weren't going to continue to replace it, but it was a gift to get us started. And the region has always known it was going to be their responsibility for the replacement, the upgrade, the restoration.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just think that there is a big part of the community that would rally around opportunities to restore, to enhance, to do a lot of betterment with the field and the track, right, and specifically areas at the regional school. So,
well, we still have a strong boosters group that is going to be partners with us on this. Youth sports use that field a lot, so we have other groups that we're hoping to engage in this project, so that we're not taking on the expense completely at the taxpayers' request. The other issue is that I think DSEF, hopefully the fundraising will that used to happen there will be stronger at our parent groups. So I think there's still some potential to mimic what DSEF did and not say that it won't come back. I mean, I think sometimes things just need to settle
Refresh.
down. I think of Span DS that sort of closed up and for a couple of years, and now there's like this new energy to bring that group back. So, maybe we can, for those of us who were so engaged in DSEF, maybe a little recruiting and just reminding people of how strong it was. We can find some new volunteers who'd want to take it on, get a little more stability after COVID and things settle down. But I think, I personally agree with you. It's sad to see it go, but I don't think it's gone forever. I hope.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that people understood it was the boosters that actually raised the money for the field and not DSCF.
Correct. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
So
It was
that's what I
boosters,
was
but that was
trying to
that was the
Right.
intention.
Right. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot, but Bob, we did do one big sustainability project with Sherborne, and that is the region of the benefactors of 50% of the power that gets generated at the transfer station.
Blue Wave.
So,
Yes.
Right.
We were able, right?
It's just good to see that the this stuff coming together. It's one of the few places where the two towns come together. So it's nice to see that sort of collaboration.
So are there any more questions? If there aren't, I'm going to move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Dover and the town of Sherborne and the Dover-Sherborne Regional School District regarding the fiscal year 24 Dover-Sherborne capital budget request.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
And I'd like to welcome Beth McCoy for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your continued support.
Beth, I've only spent 2 nights this week with Beth. I've spent 3. No, it's 3.
No, it's 3. Yeah, we were both.
Right.
Beth and I have been together. Yeah,
Right.
This is our 4th night together. So
Okay.
in 1 week.
We have 2
So
jobs
I
at
will
the
work
same
with
time.
Mona to get your signature. So no, there'll be
Do you need wet signatures?
yeah, and the
Okay.
seal. This is
Okay.
this is an official document.
All right. Then we all need to go visit Mona tomorrow.
Yeah, or you don't have to do it immediately. We'll get it within the next week. And
Oh,
then
you're better off telling us to do it immediately.
okay. Do it
Well,
tomorrow.
I should just talk for myself. Tell me
Yes.
to do it immediately.
Okay. Well,
The
thank
other
you very
two are a
much.
lot more responsible.
Exactly, and we look forward to getting this project underway. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yes,
Dawn. Nice
Thank
seeing
you
you,
for your
Beth.
support. Take care. Thank you.
The next item of business is item 1.3, and that is review of the professional service agreement for a comparative cost study of solid waste and recycling transportation options and potential vote. And I'm
Thank you,
going to
Madam Chair.
turn that over to you. There's a lot of capital budget items on here this evening.
It's a lot of capital budget items.
There is. It's a busy, as you know, a busy time of year.
Right.
So as you point out, this is related to one of the items that's currently before the Capital Budget Committee, a roll-off, replacement of a roll-off, what they call a roll-off vehicle, a roll-off truck at the transfer station. The roll-off truck transports our solid waste to Wheelabrator, Millbury, and transports our recycling to Wellesley, where we have an arrangement with the town of Wellesley to take our recycling materials. And that is up for replacement, and it's been proposed to be replaced. And during the discussions with Capital Budget Committee and Kevin McCabe about this, 2 questions came up. One is a mechanical question about, is the vehicle safe to continue to use? It's an older vehicle, and we had some concerns about some cracks that were developing in the vehicle. So we're having that vehicle as part of this, our due diligence. It's being evaluated, and within the next, probably less than a week, from the latest I heard from our DPW director, we should have a report from the outside firm that's doing what is called a DOT evaluation, sort of evaluating it under DOT guidelines. So that's going down one path. The other path is does it continue to be a good business proposition for us to do this work ourselves, to transport our solid waste and our recycling materials ourselves? Some communities that have transfer stations like us contract out the transport to private firms. And so, again, since it's been so long since we really looked at that issue, we wanted to look at that as well, the business aspect of it. Just given our own internal workload and staffing challenges we had right now, I elected to use the Collins Center to do the analysis. So that's what you have before you is the contract with the Collins Center to do this financial analysis for us. And what they'll do is they'll look at the cost that we incur for providing this service ourselves, including the cost of the equipment, maintaining the equipment, and so forth. And then we've identified already 3, and we're trying to identify 5 communities that contract out the service. And so they'll look at the cost of transporting those 3 to 5 communities, the cost of using an outside vendor to transport their solid waste and recycling.
And this came up in capital budgets conversations with Kevin McCabe. We discussed, well, if you need to replace this truck because it is a $295,000 replacement cost. So we asked, have we looked into maybe outsourcing the expense, because it would free up a resource in the town and it may be cost effective. So it's just worth looking at. It doesn't mean we're going to do it, but it is a large capital expenditure.
So just to add a little bit of context to this conversation. So the vehicle is used every day. It's a 30-year-old diesel engine that has been a workhorse for the town. And what I'd also like the Collins Center to consider is, we purchased this vehicle 30 years ago. The frame is cracked. It has a welded repair in the crack of the frame that's very common with the type of use that it gets. It, as everybody has read, it hauls the roll-on, roll-off carriers that are extremely heavy, and they're filled. So it's a heavy use equipment and it's used a lot. And what I'd like to know is, has it paid for itself over time? And has it been a net positive to the town over time? I don't know that anybody knows the answer to that. Carl, have you heard that there has been an answer to that question?
I have not heard, and our agreement with Collins Center is really to look forward, what the cost would be for us to continue to do it in-house and own the equipment versus contracting it out, as opposed to looking backwards and understanding whether it was a good business proposition in the past.
Why is that? Why are they not going to do that? Because you would, in my humble opinion, that you'd really want to know if the capital cost today, as Robin described, is $295,000. I believe the capital cost for the vehicle 30 years ago was $72,000. Now, obviously, 30 years of inflation, the cost goes up. But what has been the financial impact to the town of Dover for the past 30 years. And
Well, you don't know the maintenance cost, John.
exactly, Bob, that was my next, what's the maintenance cost been, and what has been the labor, the labor cost to the town. So wouldn't you want to know those things?
Well, isn't that what they're gonna do? They're gonna.
No.
Right, we're gonna
No.
do all that stuff going forward.
No,
in the
no,
analysis.
no. The answer to that is no. They're not going to do that. They're
Well,
going to
if
look
you
at it
have-
going
Wait a minute,
forward.
you have a proposition. We can continue to do what we're doing at a cost X, or we can look at an option which is cost Y, and we can make a decision,
Right.
right?
No.
How else would you do it?
Because you need to know if it was what's been the practice, and has it been the practice been a good practice? You want to start there.
Well, that is if you can assume what you used it for in the past
You
is
know
only what you're gonna use it for in the future.
what
Because things change. What we asked the Collins Center to do was do a cost benefit analysis of buying it. And that includes the cost of resources to operate it versus outsourcing the activity. Because from what I understand,
And
from the head
maintaining
of
it.
the DPW and maintain it, that's just the cost. It's what it does is haul the waste to Wellesley. So my
No,
understanding
no.
is
it hauls
Well,
recycling.
it hauls the recycling to Wellesley. But instead, we're going to have a different way of doing that.
Right.
So.
I get that, Robin. What I'm saying is we're missing a big part of the equation.
I don't see how it's relevant.
It's absolutely relevant. Has it been what the word that you used is business practice? Has it been an effective business practice?
Well, will it continue to be?
Is more important, right?
But wouldn't you want to know at the very beginning, has it been a good business practice?
There is no way to know that, John, because we haven't kept maintenance records.
We've had to keep maintenance records.
No,
Bob.
we don't.
No.
Okay,
If
we
I could
haven't
just-
kept maintenance records, but we know how much money we've taken in.
What do you mean money taken
money
in?
in. How much money has the town made from a recycling standpoint? Has it been a net negative or has it been a net positive? Do we know that?
I don't think so. I don't think anybody looked at it.
Yeah, that won't change. I mean, we're going to continue to operate the transfer station. This is just limited to
To
the
one piece of
transportation. And I think, Mr. Jeffries, the bigger challenge, not that what you're saying could be done. I mean, I think the bigger challenge was if we had that information, or the sort of historical, what do we compare it to? How do we compare that to the outsource option? Because then we'd be asking these other communities, let's say I don't know, you look 5 years in the rearview mirror or whatever period, can you tell us what you were paying to outsource this 5 years ago? And I think that would be a much more difficult challenge data-wise to get that information. So I think that's it would be the bigger issue for us, is having, if we looked in the rearview mirror, asked Collins Center to have any ability to collect data on the alternative in the rearview mirror, the contracting out alternative.
Yeah, I think that you're only looking at, I understand the net present value analysis going forward, right? Do we pay for the capital to the 300, let's just round it up to $300,000. It's $300,000 of capital cost today to replace that vehicle. Is there a better way to do it going forward? And my very first question is going to be to anybody, is it a good business practice for us has it been a good business practice for us to have the security, the knowledge of the person driving the truck, training the person driving the truck? I want to know, looking back, has this been a good thing? Or I think you start with asking Bobby and asking the people who've been doing it for the past as many years as they've been there, has this been a good business practice?
Well, what's before us is just to go forward.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Well, that is your opinion, John.
No,
Okay.
we're making a mistake, Robin. You don't.
Well, that is your
forward.
opinion, John. We don't have all the data. I will talk to Kevin tomorrow.
We should have data.
No, we don't, John.
We should
What we have
data.
before us this evening is a cost benefit analysis for the purchase of the new vehicle. That's what we have before us. We're not going to resolution debating what analysis we need to do. So I'm going to move to approve the operations contract between the town of Dover and sorry, I'm one step ahead of myself here. So I'm going to move to approve the professional service agreement between the town of Dover and the University of Massachusetts Collins Center for a comparative cost study of solid waste and recycling transportation options, and authorize the interim town administrator to sign said agreement. And just for the record, the cost is $8,500.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
No, John Jeffries. No, this is putting the cart before the horse, and it is something we're going to come back and still not have all the information on. I vote no.
All right. So now we're going to move forward to item 1.4, and that is the small water system service contract discussion and potential vote. And I'm going to ask Mr. Valente to present this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is regarding the Dover Water Department, which some people listening may wonder there's a Dover Water Department, but there is. We run a well, we operate a well that serves the Chickering Elementary School and the Carroll Park system. And it's when you operate a well system, it's something you need to maintain and check every day. And so in the past, we've had two operators, Carl Warnick, who you all know from our facilities department, is the main operator, and then we've had a backup person. We no longer do have a backup to Carl. And the challenge has been, because this maintenance and inspection that's required, it's what's known as confined space entry. When you go in to do the inspection, you have to go in and have two people there. And we just don't have that anymore. We don't have a second person. We haven't been able to find a second person. And even when we had a second person, if one of them was sick or on vacation or whatever, we weren't able to do all the necessary inspections in a safe manner, having two people. So both Mr. Warnick and Kevin McCabe did some work on this and identified a firm that operates water systems, small water systems. And we negotiated a contract with them to do the daily inspections. The cost of that to the town will be $7,200 a year. If there is any emergency call outs that are needed and they have to come out, that's billed on an hourly basis. So we'll budget this, given this would be our first year of doing this, and we just don't know what emergency call outs there may be. We would budget this at a total of $12,000 a year to give us some cushion, to cover any emergency call outs. But this will bring us into compliance with the OSHA regulations regarding confined space entry, and also address the other two related problems, not being able to find our own second person to back it up and to cover for when Mr. Warnick may be on vacation or otherwise unavailable, to make sure we can inspect this well.
So is this a complete additive cost, or would you say that some of this cost is being offset because if we were to have a second individual, those costs would be incurred by the town?
It's, yes, closer to the latter. So because we don't have a second individual, we're not paying that stipend. And
But were we paying a stipend at any point?
we were, yes.
Okay.
How much was that?
You know, that happened to be before, I won't say before my time, but something that I don't have in my files with me,
No,
what it was. It wasn't substantial. You know, I believe, I'm pretty sure it was less than $4,000 a year that we were paying for the backup.
Carl, it was $750 for the backup water operator.
There you go. There's Carl. Okay. And that was on an annual basis, Carl?
Yes.
And then was there an hourly rate? Was there an hourly pay on top of that when he reported?
No.
When he,
No. If I had to call him, and usually I have to call him, in the past, it's when I've been on vacation. And I've used Bobby from the highway to talk him through things because he's a quicker response to my backup operator.
Sure.
And he's done that probably a handful of times.
And Carl, the other thing you could probably fill in since you're here is, I believe you told me if there are emergency calls and you're in town, that you would respond first before we
Absolutely.
called.
Yes.
Yes.
Usually the calls will come between Monday and Friday. It's when I'm away for the weekend or on vacation that there's been an issue. But DEP requires somebody to respond within an hour of a phone call, that there's no water pressure or et cetera, et cetera. And that's a regulation. We tried, I'm sorry a moment, on my telephone, I couldn't get online. We tried a couple different firms. I talked to Aquarian. They don't want to do it. In the past, I've used Colonial's operators. And it's just, we've exhausted. We've tried a couple companies. One company I think was, don't quote me, but I believe it was like $25,000 a year. This company deals with small systems in Dover presently. And that's the price that they had given me.
And Carl, I think I misspoke. It's not a daily inspection. It's a bi-weekly inspection. Is that right?
It's bi-monthly inspection, unless I need them. And if I need them,
twice a month.
go ahead. What's that?
Twice a month.
I believe that's what it is.
Right. Yes. Okay. I think I said daily, but it's
not a daily. If it was daily, it would be a lot more.
Be a lot more. I think looking at having the contract in front of me, it appears it's every other week they'll be in.
Right. It's basically, bottom line is if I'm not available, they are available. They're planning on putting a lockbox so they can, excuse me, so they can get into the pump house. And then that becomes, if it's an emergency, it becomes an hourly rate at that point. If it's not on their quote unquote regular schedule. It's just for insurance purposes, and like I said, it's a DEP requirement.
Right. And it
So,
seems as though I was gonna ask if we touch base with Aquarian, but you already did that.
I already did that, did it with Colonial. I ended up having a backup operator from, I don't know if you recall, from the Medfield Water Department, but he has since left Medfield and no longer available. So, and it's been a couple of years.
And you've been
We-
doing
we-
it yourself
Yes,
with Bobby
And if there's an
basically as your
emergency-
backup?
yes, yes. And Kevin also has helped Bobby. So that's why, I mean, like I said, it's a regulation through DEP, and we don't presently have backup operator that's licensed.
So Robin, I think that for $600 a month, that this is a great deal.
Absolutely. It's
The
an
budget-
unforeseen expense for the water, the water
Right.
budget, but it's necessary.
No,
in my-
I completely get that. I completely agree. And I think you've exhausted all other options. This is, and I think this is especially since they're already servicing water, small water companies or in Dover, small water
Right.
departments. It's
Carl, can you get Bob Springett to go down into the well with you? It's only,
Yes, he's licensed.
oh, he's
I've
definitely,
done some bilges, John.
he's definitely licensed.
Well, Bob, they have a OSHA 10 class coming up, I think, next week. It's a 2-day class. You
Yep.
can get certified.
Yeah, I like the outsourcing model.
You have the motion, I believe.
So Robin, I
Yeah.
move to approve the operation contract between the town of Dover and Small Water Systems LLC dated January 30, 2023, and authorize the interim town administrator to sign said agreement.
Second,
all in favor. I, Robin Hunter.
hi, Bob Sprant.
Hi, John Freeze. I still like the idea of Bob going down into the bottom of the well with Carl.
Well, thank you, Carl and Carl for
No, thank you. That's Carl with a K for me and Carl with a C.
I know that. Carl and Carl. I'm glad you're
Thank you
on,
very
Carl.
much.
We appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. And your dinner smelled delicious the other night.
Oh, thank you. That was lunch.
Oh,
Oh, no,
it was
that was-
quite late, but
Sorry,
it
you.
smelled really good.
That was dinner. Oh,
So the next
thank you
item,
again.
yeah, thanks a lot. The next item of business is the just an update on the fiscal year 2024 budget. And Carl Valente is going to present that to us.
Thank you. And Mona, do you need to give me a shared screen? Let's see. Can you see that on your screen?
No,
No, so I think Mona, you're gonna.
I mean, I have the packet.
Yeah, you have the
We
packet.
have it in our budget overview, includes capital budget requests, pages with slides, Carl.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if we can.
Yeah, I've got sharing participants, but it's won't let you, I guess.
Wow.
4 slides.
Okay, so you had asked, it looks like I won't be able to put it up there. But you had asked at your last meeting for an update on the budget. So The 4 slides are the very high level overview, and then I have with me much more detailed information in case you have any specific questions. Um, so from a big picture point of view, and I should add from the just earlier this week at the open hearing, while I was on vacation last week and even as late as Monday, the numbers were still in flux. So I didn't have everything up to date for open hearing, but this document here is now current, at least where things stand. There's still some open issues that are being discussed, but what I have before you, it brings everything up to date. So from a gross budget increase, that includes capital. The budget's up 3.5%, or a little over $1.5 million. That has 2 components to it. The operating budget increase, which is about $1.4 million increase, or 3.4%, and then the capital increase of about $432,000, which is it's not a large number, but is a large percent increase at almost 32%. And that assumes that we'll fund the Claybrook project and the fire vehicle project with debt. So it doesn't reflect the overall capital cost of those 2 items, but only the related debt service, the annual debt service. In terms of with this increase, where does this leave our unused taxing capacity? Right now, we're estimating that at just under $2.3 million of unused levy capacity. That compares to $3.7 million last year, which was a high mark for us in terms of unused levy capacity. Our 4-year average of unused levy capacity is $2.5 million. So we're just a little bit below our 4-year average. In terms of the drivers, and this is on the next slide, the drivers of the municipal operating budget increases. The first, and these aren't in any particular order, the first is at the ambulance department, where we find we need to increase our stipend for our EMTs for weekdays, for them being on call weekdays, because we've been challenged to having enough coverage on weekdays. Second, in the building inspectors department, a new part-time assistant building commissioner we would like to bring on, and that's longer term. We also think that will be important in terms of our succession planning in that department. In the highway department, we're looking to add a foreman, a mechanic that we've had in the past, but haven't had that recently, and then a business manager. And though the business manager would be a full-time position, we anticipate one of our part-time administrative position person will be retiring in the next year. And so we wouldn't fill that position at all. We'd leave that vacant, and instead we'd like to have a full-time business manager. So it's not like we're adding a full FTE. It's really a half-time FTE. In the planning department, a $65,000 increase for consulting fees for the village center study and some natural resource protection zoning and tree preservation. We're looking at a tree preservation bylaw. In technology, we have a contract, as I think you all know, with a firm called Retrofit. We've had to expand those services with Retrofit as we've lost our internal capability. And so that's an additional $24,000. And then our health insurance budget is growing by 10% for the coming year, about $260,000. And then an issue, and an item we've only tangentially discussed, but in terms of something the board is in, but not in terms of dollars and cents, is, you were asking us to really look into bringing in an outside firm to help us with communications, and hopefully long-term to help us develop a townwide communications plan and to redesign our website. So I reviewed the materials that were presented to you last November. And at that time, my predecessor and Kate O'Brien had anticipated or recommended a budget of $95,000 to develop a townwide communications plan and to start that implementation. And then for website design, I looked at the last time we designed our website, which was just a little under 4 years ago, and that was about $40,000.
So we use Civic Plus, a consultant, right?
Right.
That's right. So I'm estimating, or came up with a sort of a proposed budget of $125,000 for that purpose, under our sort of one-time projects category. I be honest with you, there's nothing more magic to those numbers than what I just explained to you. Hopefully it's enough for it. It certainly will get us a solid start on that work. I've also been contacted by the Conservation Commission, which would like a staffing study done of their department. That is not currently in the budget. I referred them to the staffing study we did at the Board of Health last year in terms of a model and a price, but I haven't heard back from the chairman of the Conservation Commission yet in terms of if they want to go forward with that. So it would have to fit under this category of one-time projects, but it is currently not built into any numbers in our budget.
So Carl, all of these are already in the top line budget number that you presented?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So one of the things I think would be really helpful and is that for some of these are really what we should be showing is the net add. So for instance, in the highway department, the work still had to get done on the trucks. So we paid an outside mechanic to fix the trucks. So if we brought somebody in, it would decrease some of our external costs. And then we should show the net add for the business manager, because, I know with Craig, as we're trying to automate things more, the highway department really needed somebody more than a part-time administrator to make sure that things are properly taken care of. So I think we should show the net add over there.
Sure. Yep, that makes sense. We can do that.
Right. Then for the website redesign, I thought really what we were looking at was an update. So it's not it's not what we did last time.
No, it's not from scratch.
Right. So I think it's just an update, and based upon feedback that Kate had gotten, it was making sure that it was a better user experience, I guess.
Yeah, less clicks.
Right, fewer clicks.
Sure.
But so I think in the original contract, I think after 3 years of use, you had an opportunity to take a look at the website. I think it was all part of the original agreement. So with 3 years of use, now we should, we have data, we do this, it was sort of a refresh. It wasn't a rebuild.
Right.
Yeah. The reason I've thought of it in a little broader context is when I was interviewing the communications consultants,
Yep,
the three communications consultants, they all brought up the point of your website and your communications plan should speak to one another.
exactly.
And so at least the one that you selected, the communication consultant, they do not recommend, well, I shouldn't say they don't recommend staying with Civic Plus, but they suggested that we'd be able to improve our communications outreach with actually a different product. Now we may choose not to do that.
That's clearly a
But-
different scope.
Yeah, but in terms of linking not only your website but your social media to your communications, our discussions would be we may want to consider a different product. But again, we're just in a very early stage of this discussion, and if
Yes.
you're not comfortable at all with the website piece, you can take it out.
So are there any grants available? Because last time there was some kind of a grant available for some of it, I believe, or am I making stuff up?
I don't remember that, Robin.
Okay, oh, I could be making stuff up.
So I worked for a man who was very successful, and his motto was crawl before you walk, before you run. And I've always applied that when trying to implement technology. So it'd be interesting to hear what they have to say about options. But right now we're still at the crawl phase.
Right, but the problem is the budgets, you have to fund it 18 months out. So you're trying to get a sense of how much it's going to cost. So we have the funds available.
So is the request to set aside $125,000?
Yeah.
It must have happened when we voted the RFP back in the fall.
No, I think that number comes from what the anticipation was, as Carl just stated, based upon what Kate was looking at, and then maybe what did it come from conversations with the three finalists of the communications project, Carl?
No, it came from what was presented to you last November for cost estimates.
Estimates from Kate.
From Kate, yes.
Yeah.
So I only added that number, after your last meeting when you, approved moving ahead with the communications consultant. And we talked about that the communications consultant was just dealing with specific
Right.
projects for us, not an overall communications plan. So I believe if I didn't misread you, you still wanted to go ahead with having developed a townwide communications plan.
Right. And those were the proposals that Kate brought forward.
Right.
And then
There were, I don't know if the word proposal is correct, Robin. I viewed it more of, this was Kate's observations as to what next steps were. And she really, in that presentation, in that slide presentation, she covered a lot of ground. Some of it as that she used, the words that she used was not coordinated. There were a lot of parts that needed to be addressed, very few of which were actually coordinated because of the way all of our departments and the content from all the various departments is distributed. There is no central command for content, creativity, and communication. Yep. Carl, you just shared your screen.
Yeah. I'm not the quickest on this technology, but I figured out what I needed to do.
So are we done with that one? We clear on that, item 7?
Well, it's just, are we comfortable with this? Do you want Carl to go back and refine? This is one of those things that at town meeting, we're going to need to have a better breakout of exactly what.
So I definitely, listen, this is not ready for prime time public.
Right. Right, but I mean,
by any measure.
Right.
This is inside baseball stuff.
right, but I think it's on here for us because Carl wants to make sure, A, it should be an ask in the budget.
Item 7,
Right,
yeah.
right.
But
And
did we
then
already
we can
vote for that?
refine the number, you know, this,
I'm sorry,
No.
I thought we approved this back in November.
right, but now we have to put
Yeah.
the devil's in the details. Now you have to remember what you approved.
Okay,
You know, we approved communication plan. I remember, I believe that's what we did. We
yeah,
wanted to move forward with the communication plan.
yeah,
And then I think I would have to agree with the communication consultants that your website and communication plan
need to be linked,
right.
yeah. And it was always on the table that that Civic Plus, that we had the option to do a rebuild, or not a rebuild,
A refresh.
yeah.
So I mean,
yes.
I think it sounds like the three of, I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that the three of us are in agreement that this is something we want to present at town meeting. I think we just need to take the next week or so and figure out exactly what the pieces are and what it's going to cost, or what an estimate is, which we may already have, so that we can intelligently speak to it at town meeting.
So why isn't just this money in the professional services budget?
Because remember, we, just like the water study and the rebuild, we said that if we were going to do one-time projects, we, in order to be transparent, would make sure that those items are, everybody understands what they are and can vote on them separately, because it's not a recurring item in the budget. Although I think this is in the professional services budget, right?
I also think it's not a one-time, this is the way we do business. This is a current operation that is in need of fixing.
But it's in the budget driver. It's in the presentation.
It's not a budget. I mean, the budget is $42 million.
Right, but it's one of the big difference. It's one of the different things from last year. And
Well,
that's
yeah, but that gets back to this presentation, right? We're looking at an increase of 3.4% on the operating budget in an 8% inflationary environment. That's a good news story. That's not a bad news story. And we're sitting around here talking about dollars in a sense of $26,000 and $30,000 on a $42 million budget. I mean, this thing lacks, to me, it needs to have a storyline and it needs to have context. I mean, people walking around going, "Oh, you're spending all this money." Well, gee, we're not. And I would like to know what the increases is in salaries and healthcare benefits year over year, where most of the money the town has spent. So I've kind of just been kind of confused about what this is all about.
it's just an update on where we stand on the budget.
I know, but this was presented to open hearing, right? This has become a public document. If you're putting something in the public, it needs to be contexted.
Well, we're not going to resolve this evening, so why don't we work with Carl on a more comprehensive presentation? And we should coordinate with Warrant, because typically Warrant pulls something together.
And I would add along those lines is the Warrant Committee has been reaching out to me saying they want an updated budget of sort of everything so that they can take a vote, because they have to go to print in about 10 days for the blue book. So the question is, should this stay in or not be in the budget?
No, it
Regardless
should
of
stay,
where,
well, which, the $125,000?
yes.
That should be in. I mean, we need it to run the town.
So it's in the budget. It's already in there. It's in it's in the operating budget.
Right. So then the question is, how do you present the operating budget?
Yeah, I think that's still, you're right, that's something we have to still work on for a town meeting. How do we want to present that?
Right. And the second thing is I
wasn't meant for
would
that.
separate capital and operating. I think it's very confusing.
But also, while we're on the topic, I would just like to suggest, I went back to my notes of November 3rd meeting where Kate made this presentation, and with regards to the project for communications. And so I think it's pretty easy to go back to find that the actual presentation. I like to review the presentation and just say, find out first and foremost, where do we stand on what our engagement is with the communications part, so we can wrap this together appropriately. But also with regards to the highway, the additional foreman for the highway, the mechanic, and the business manager, what's the time frame for that? And how realistic is your words, Carl, were combining take the part-time business manager who's leaving or no longer going to be available, and then combine that with the business manager. What would be the implementation timeline for that particular role, right? So I think to have a visual of the timeline and a visual of when the money is actually going to be implemented, spent, it's a must. We're going to have to do that. One note, I just want to add this on the November 3rd presentation that I made during Kate's presentation was limited bandwidth. Her words. The town has limited bandwidth for content, engagement, and we have no subs. I think that meant subcontractors currently.
I would say, if anything, it's only gotten worse.
Worse, right.
As we've lost key staff people. So I think that's still the case in terms of limited bandwidth. But it's really, at this point, I appreciate, talking about how we want to present this at town meeting. I just needed to know, for presenting to the warrant committee, did you want this in the budget? And is this amount 125 acceptable to the board?
For me, Carl, the answer is yes. And I just have one comment on slide number 1 is, has anybody approached you, the Board of Selectmen, any of the Mona, with a rebuttal towards buying the new engine 1, the new fire truck? Has anybody given formal opposition to that?
Well, had you attended open hearing on Monday night, there were some individuals that had an issue with the fire truck.
Right.
And the capital budget has reached out. We have reached out to the fire engineers as well as the chief, so that they are going to pull together a presentation that addresses the needs and all the information that's necessary to make the value proposition to the town. So everybody is working on that, because the fire department was expecting pushback, because they do get pushback. I mean, you remember the ambulance and the other engine, then the comment that was made was, didn't we just replace a fire truck? Well, we didn't just replace a fire truck. Time flies.
I'm aware of all those things, and I'm aware of the pushback, and I'm aware of it's a grassroots effort to push back against that capital request from members of the fire department. So that is, I'm very well aware of it. And as you say, it's going to be something that's going to have to be very well articulated, because there's going to be opposition from inside the department against the capital, against capital being spent for the fire truck.
Really?
Yes, 100%. I've already been approached by several members of the department.
You want to move on to capital?
Sure.
So the capital, since we're talking about capital side of the equation, so as Mr. Springer was mentioning in terms of context, so the context for the 24 capital is about 3.76 million of requests. That compares to last year, 2.2 million. Most of the things here you've seen before. You've heard Chickering school improvements we have every year, the DS improvements, school improvements, the HVAC. The two big ones this year are, again, in the fire department. You're just alluding to the new proposal for a new engine at $990,000, and then within the DPW, although their total is 1.4 million, the big item is $1 million for Claybrook. And in the last just couple of days, we're hearing from the engineers doing the design work that they think that's going to come in above $1 million is their latest estimate. And both the fire engine and the Claybrook project, we're recommending or suggesting those be done with debt, so it doesn't just blow up our whole budget, but spread those costs over probably 5 years is what I would recommend at this time. Do a 5-year bond.
And
That's what's sort of driving the capital budget at this point.
right, and Carl, I think we should mention that simultaneously to all of this, we're also working with capital budgets and the head of the DPW to look into some of these mass works infrastructure grants to see if we may be able to A, get one, and B, use it for both Claybrook and the culvert work that is going to be necessary over the next few years. So there is an active, we are actively trying to see if we can offset any of this with grants.
Yes, and actually the very first step in that is the notice of intent, I think it's called, or something along those lines.
Right.
Is due tomorrow, and Kevin McCabe will be submitting that initial notice for both projects, Claybrook and the culvert construction. So we'll submit that. He'll submit that tomorrow, and then the formal applications are due the first week of June.
So I know there's still work to be done, but it would be interesting to know what the impact on the taxpayer would be of borrowing $2 million over 5 years or longer. Both the fire truck and the roadway are going to be with us for a while.
Say that again, Bob.
Carl's suggesting that we use a 5-year borrowing window for the $2 million, which may make perfect sense. But these are long-lived. Both of these things are long-lived items, and I'd like to know, from the taxpayer point of view, what does a 5-year borrow do or cost versus a longer-term item?
Yeah, I have models set up for all that.
Yeah, I figure you did.
Won't take long. The only reason I was starting at 5 years is from a bonding point of view. It's expensive to go into the bond market. There's a cost to it, and it's just not, from a bonding point of view, $2 million just isn't a very big issue,
right?
To try to sell. So, but we can look at different models or different terms if the board would like to do that.
Well, we
that's
still have
it.
a hump that we have to get through on the capital side. Should we be borrowing more? Or should we have a borrowing plan to get through the spike?
Yeah, so you know, I think we've talked about in the past, you can't borrow in anticipation. You can't borrow unless town meeting first has approved a borrowing. So the legal requirement is, do you have a town meeting vote? But in terms of an overall plan, in fact, as recently as today, the town treasurer and I had a call with our financial advisor and talked just about that, the different options, given we have this spike coming over the next 3 years, and where we want to maybe hold back on doing the long-term borrowing until we have sort of more to borrow, to try to underwrite the spread the cost of borrowing over a larger base. So we've already started that discussion with our financial advisor.
Excellent.
Is our financial advisor the same firm that gives us the gray bounded books at tax time?
It's Hilltop Securities. I don't think they're the ones who give us the gray books. I know the one you're speaking of. I don't believe it's Hilltop, but
I've never heard that name before. Hilltop Securities. Where are they?
they're local. Many communities use them, and I'm trying to remember, before they were Hilltop, they were bought out, and they were First Southwest. So you may have heard of them on their First Southwest Securities before they became Hilltop.
And do we use them specifically for our bonding?
We do.
Oh, I've never heard either of those names, and that's it. Robin, have you heard of either of those names?
I'm not in the municipal bond arena. I wouldn't know.
But for us, for Dover.
I don't recall.
Yeah, I mean, because we bond so little, you probably didn't know we were using them.
Right.
I didn't bring them in. They were firm we were using before, although I've used either them or their predecessors for probably close to 20 years. They're one of two who do most of the municipal work in Massachusetts. And then the last slide is just regarding the use of reserves to fund the budget. So this year we're proposing a little over $3.7 million use of free cash. These are all of these numbers are based on the policy that the board and the capital budget committee and warrant committee approved last year on trying to really manage our free cash and have a long-term plan for our free cash. So none of these numbers are new to you. They're all ones that we modeled last year and were approved as part of those policies.
Right. I mean, in other words, all of this was already earmarked.
Right.
This was already earmarked, right?
Do any of you recall, we obviously did this last year for Carol. We set the money aside. We've set the money aside. We've put it somewhere. Where is it? Where is the money that we've taken to put into Carol last year?
Didn't it pay interest?
Well, it's not. We didn't sort of set it aside in a separate fund. We could have, and we talked about that, but there was no decision made to put it in the capital stabilization fund, because I think you wanted just flexibility. Things change. So it's just part of our overall cash reserves that we carry. as opposed to number 2 and number 3 on the list, those are specifically in separate accounts, financial accounts. But the amount that you had allocated for Carol, which was a total of $4 million over 10 years, is just part of our free cash number, our overall free cash number.
Right, we made the decision not to put it in the
Right.
capital stabilization account at that
Right.
point. And
So-
we earmarked it to offset the increase in debt that taxpayers would have incurred with respect to the Carroll Community Center until the time that the Chickering school debt rolled off.
Yeah. Robin, could we put on the agenda for our next meeting or the meeting after, what the town of Dover's strategy implementation for our treasury management policy, specifically regarding our cash, our free cash. We, as I'm sure everyone knows, this has been a tumultuous week in the financial world as a result of the failures of Boston Private Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Credit Suisse, and now First Republic. So the conversation is going to be centered around, we, the town of Dover, currently have a relationship with Citizens. We have payroll amounts that are made available, so all of our people get paid, insurance premiums get paid, blah, 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 all the things that we do. I would just like it I would like us all to be better acquainted with exactly how much money is in treasury management, how much money is not in treasury management, how much money is in our Citizens portfolio. Carl, while I'm having this conversation, the name of the firm is Melanson that I was thinking of, that does the book.
Those are our independent
auditors. They're the independent auditors that audit that give us that silver bound book that we review every year.
Oh, that book, yep. And they're no longer Melanson, by the way. They have a new name.
Of
Right,
course.
and that book called the Audited Financial Statements.
Yeah. And so literally, Carl, I went to the audited financial statement to get the answer to those questions when those questions were asked of me this week, because it's just something that's been on people's mind in every organization in the United States and in the world now, with bank failures being something we're going to be dealing with. So just as an aside to that. So
that's it for my presentation. And if you have any other specific questions, I'll try to answer those.
No, thank you. I think we should move to the next item on the agenda, which is bittersweet. It is the appointment of Chief McGowan as the interim police chief and approval of his employment contract as interim between Dover and Chief McGowan. And for those that may not know, but the chief, effective March 29th, is that the right date, is retiring, but he is going to stay on and help us as we find his replacement, which is going to be a tough act to follow. So I'm going to move this over to Carl.
I'm just
Stop sharing.
I'm trying to get rid of my screen here. Stop share. Got it.
There you go.
As you stated, Madam Chair, the chief will retire on the 29th, but has agreed to stay on as an interim. So we're becoming a town of interims. So we needed to do a new employment agreement with him in that sort of same but different role. So that's the document that you have in your packet. It mirrors his existing document or his existing employment agreement. His existing agreement, his salary for this year and next July 1 was already established, so that stayed the same. I did prorate some of the other, his uniform allowance and some of the other things that were in his agreement. Since he'll only be likely with us for 6 months. So I did prorate those. His health coverage as an employee, his health coverage is the town covers 70%. As a retiree, the town covers 50%. So he will technically be a retiree of the town. So I made that change that his health insurance will be covered at 50% by the town. And I deleted the severance clause since it no longer seemed appropriate to have a severance clause in there. But other than that, these two agreements look very similar to one another. And the chief has reviewed it. And he was going to drop by a signed copy today, but he's in agreement with this document.
Right, and we conferred with HR counsel as well.
That's right.
So
Questions?
are there any questions or?
None for me.
None for me.
All right, so then I move to appoint Chief McGowan as Dover's interim police chief commencing March 30th, 2023 and ending no later than September 30th, wishful thinking, February 2023, and to approve the employment contract between the town of Dover and Peter A. McGowan.
Second.
See, I'm trying to get him to stay longer. All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Chief McGowan. You may not have to have a party on March 30th, but we're not going to let you get away just sneaking out of town. So. The next item is the appointment of members of the town administrator screening committee. So before I begin, I just want to let everybody know the process that was underwent with respect to the nominations that I'm about to make. This screening committee was mirrored after the screening committee that we used for our former town administrator. We actively asked for members for the chair of certain committees to appoint members to this committee. Though the committees that we asked to have representatives were the planning board, a representative from the schools. We also asked for an employee. So 3 of the 7 came from boards and then me. And in addition to that, there were only 2 at-large members, so I'm missing somebody. So I need to look at my notes.
Lister, I think.
This is a senior moment on my part. And I can't find where I wrote everything down. This is a horrible moment for me here. I am losing my mind. So I followed the exact same process. We also had an ad on the website or a request for at-large members. For the 2 at-large member positions, there were 4 individuals that that applied. I spoke to all 4 of those members and then made a determination of which 2 would be put on the screening committee. The criteria I used for that were, I thought it was important for the individuals to have knowledge of the town and how we operate as a town. I thought that would work very well for the screening committee since it did last time. So this evening, I'm going to present the 7 members to you. The committee, I forgot, was Warrant. So this evening, I would like to nominate to this committee Valerie Lynn from the Planning Board, Felicia Hoffman as the employee representative, Dawn Fattori, who really brings a unique perspective, not only as a member of the school administration, but also as an employee, as a former member of the school committee and also a citizen of Dover. I think she really brings a unique perspective, and having served on many superintendent searches. Melissa Herman is going to be the representative from the Warrant Committee. And then the 2 at-large members are Dave Havland, our moderator, and Dixon Smith, who is a professional recruiter, as well as an EMT and firefighter for the town. Dixon has also served on capital budget and the Warrant Committee. So I would like your approval to appoint those, and I'm the 7th, those 6 members.
I move that we approve the 7 members as nominated.
Second,
And I, all in favor, I, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
I, John Jeffries.
I also want to thank the other individuals that volunteered. I really enjoyed my conversations with them. They were both very, very qualified members. I really tried to balance. It just so happened there are many women on this committee, and I was trying to balance that as well. So I hope that we can find other volunteer opportunities for the other 2 members. So thank you all very much for serving and for volunteering to serve. I mean, we are just so really lucky to have people in this town that are willing to volunteer and serve. The next item on the agenda is the town election ballot question discussion. And the town clerk has asked whether there will be a ballot question on the May 15th, 2023 town election ballot. So if we were to do a bond exclusion or exemption, right, Carl, that would be on the ballot.
That's correct.
Right now, because of the small amount of the bonds and the fact that we can absorb them as part of our tax levy, that's how we were thinking. If we were to bond it, we would do it. If we were thinking we would like to have a bond exclusion, so that would be over and above 2.5, then we need to put that on the ballot.
Right. And the only thing I would add, 2 things I would add is for whatever the additional amount is for the Carroll Community Center, you don't need to if you chose to put it back on the ballot, you could do that at a later date. We wouldn't sell those bonds probably for at least a year. The other is there's an option when you have a debt exclusion for a project that's been approved like we have, that comes in above your cost estimates, you can go to the Department of Revenue and ask if they'll allow that additional amount to be included in your original vote. And you have to demonstrate to them that it has not, you didn't change the scope of the project, that it's the same, the original scope. And there's a form that you fill out and so forth for that. And when we were talking to our financial advisor today about it, because again, we were talking about sort of the big picture on doing bonding, she said, Department of Revenue has been granting many of these exemptions and letting communities include these supplemental appropriations as part of their original debt exclusion vote. So that may also be a possibility should you want to include whatever this additional amount in as part of the original vote, be covered under the original vote. We could approach the Department of Revenue and see if they would authorize that. But that also is a decision that can be made, once we go to town meeting and see if, town meeting is even going to approve this additional amount.
Right. So this is really for the May town meeting?
This is for the May town meeting, yes.
Right.
Before the town clerk votes, before the town clerk prints the ballots. She wanted you to formally say, yes, there's no questions that will be on this year.
Couldn't there always be a motion from the floor that would require bonding?
It's whether it's a bond exclusion or not. So if the bonding is serviced out of the tax levy, then you don't need a ballot. It's just the town meeting vote is sufficient. So if it's over and above 2.5%, then it's excluded. And that requires town meeting as well as a ballot vote.
I recall that came up, Robin, with regards to the swimming pool. That was a motion from the floor at our outside meeting for the original vote of the carol.
Yeah, and that all could happen, but that's after the May election. So, because that would happen at the June special town meeting. So the real question is there any reason that you would expect to put a ballot question on for the May election?
No, my outside voice would say no, but then again, I would go back to could there be a motion from the floor which would require this? And I guess the answer,
not at the annual town meeting. There's no, at least regarding Carol, there's no question.
No.
Before town meeting.
John's asking in general.
Yeah, just in
isn't
general.
that option always available that somebody could say, we want this to be a bond exclusion?
Yeah, they could.
But
they could do that.
But you didn't know, so it wouldn't be on the ballot, right?
Right. Well, it would have to be on a subsequent ballot.
Yeah, you'd have to reprint the ballots.
Well, you would either, I don't think you'd have, just time-wise with town meeting and the election, I don't think you would be able to. The board would either have to call a special election or put it on the next, hold the project. Actually, the law requires if town meeting did that, you have to hold the election. It's either within 90 days or 120 days. I don't have the statute in front of me. So if that came from the floor, you'd have to call for a special election within the statutory period.
Right, and since we don't know what it might be, you couldn't really have a question on the ballot.
That's right. Yeah, there would be nothing we would know at this point.
So we don't exclude the dead.
Right.
There's no question. Okay.
So then I move that the board inform the town clerk that there will not be any ballot questions on the May 15th, 2023 town election.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
The next item is to approve the waiver of a building permit fee for the roof gutter replacement project on the townhouse and authorize the town administrator to sign the building permit application. And Carl,
Yep. And as has been explained to me by the building commissioner, you've done this for other town building projects. We don't charge ourselves. But it requires a formal vote of the board to waive the building permit fee.
so I'm going to move to waive the building permit fee of $5,571 associated with the roof/gutter replacement project at the townhouse and to authorize the interim town administrator to sign the building permit application.
Second,
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
All right, so the next item of business is just each of us to give an update. So since we already have some agenda items, why don't we do it in the order of those agenda items? And then after the IT staffing, we can do before upcoming agendas, give other items that we need to update. So the
Okay.
first item is the progress and update of rebidding the community center building project.
Waiting for the bidding documents to come back. It's supposed to be in March.
Do we have a date?
There is a date on that's posted on the website, project timeline.
Yeah,
The
I
end of the
can't
month, around
remember.
25th.
Okay, so soon. The town administrator search update. So advertising went out. The first week we had 14 applicants. I've been trying not to harass the recruiters, so I am very disciplined and only ask once a week. So tomorrow I will ask again.
That is an absolute lie. I guarantee you've asked more than once a
No,
week.
I haven't. And as a matter of fact, they reached out to me before I even asked. Now that we have the screening committee set up, we need to schedule a meeting for either April 2nd or April 3rd. So I will send that out to the screening committee, just to, with us and the recruiters, to go over the process that we'll embark upon, and also just to give us an overview of how many applicants we got, and give a high level of their first pass at the applicants and who they think or how many they think will be interviewing. So it's very exciting. And I very much enjoyed working with Community Paradigm. You can tell they've done this before many times. And I'm not sure who's giving an update on IT staffing.
Not me.
Carl, is that you?
No, Mr. Springett had asked that be put on the agenda.
Oh, so the question was, what are we doing about IT staffing?
So do we have from the standpoint of retrofit, are we looking, what are we looking to do in addition to retrofit, or is there a retrofit contract something that's coming up?
Or are there people available in the marketplace to fill the slots that we have? Right, Dave Sullivan's been out almost a year.
Right, so we had no success trying to fill Dave's position back then. The other IT position we have, which is really what I call a wires and pliers person, a person who puts in your new computer and does that. We had we only had one applicant back then, and that applicant, we hired him, but he ended up moving on. So it's not a very great market for recruiting. It's not one of the items that I have on my list right now. My priority is the treasurer's position, the HR director position, and now, and I'll mention this later, the planning director position. I'm trying to fill those. I really think we need to sort of step back and figure out what we're going to do about IT and how we're going to approach it.
Well, we have IT. It's part of how we work.
Yeah, but in terms of how we staff it, if again, for the immediate term, retrofit is doing a decent job for us. I've no complaints. They're not doing everything. It's not as like when you have somebody in house. But I think we just have to, the next town administrator is going to have to address that issue about how they want to staff.
Well, the idea always was we had somebody in house who was the municipal project manager. We used a firm to provide the arms and legs when you need them. And so we're running, we had an outage you guys were suffering for 3 or 4 days. They're just things that are, we had problems with Zoom passcodes. We need somebody who can sort of oversee this stuff so we can actually function more or less normally going forward. No, can't wait.
Well, I think the outage was just one of those things that happened with IT, and you would have had to get somebody like retrofit.
Understand it, but we have no tech support.
Right, but there are a lot of positions. Well, retrofit is providing the tech support.
Tech support, on what I understand, they would do end user support.
And they're doing infrastructure reports.
And they've always done infrastructure. But, there are other aspects of IT and running software and programs that require some local knowledge. We're using a Park and Rec employee to do things.
Yeah, I guess, I don't disagree that it would be valuable if we had a project manager type person on staff, like we had when Dave Sullivan was there. I think we have to be realistic whether a small town like Dover can find an individual, one person who can play that role.
Or you find a firm, just like we've done everywhere else.
Or find a firm.
Can we expand retrofits reach or their capacity? Do they even have the capacity to do this?
Yeah, it's everything I know about them is they don't do project management, software applications.
Right.
They do networks, and you mentioned the outage last week, which was devastating to us. But I called them from my cab coming back into town on Saturday, and they were not only working on Saturday but working on Sunday to address it. So from that perspective of managing our network, I think they've done a good job for the town and far beyond what we could ever afford to have in-house. But I think Mr. Springer's question about for project management and applications, I think that's a bigger question. Do we try to find somebody to be on staff, or do we see if we can find a firm to provide that service?
So, Carl, we don't have any projects. We're not doing application development, but there's a whole core of management that goes around the applications that we have, around passwords, about all the infrastructure that fits around that I don't know who was doing in the past, whether it was Dave or Chris or Kate, but we don't have that at least to my knowledge, a person who oversees that aspect of running software.
Well,
Yeah.
my understanding was Retrofit was maintaining our licenses, our Google licenses for us.
Licenses is part of it, but
So
Zoom was a
all-
password issue, right?
It's all the software. Zoom was an authentication issue that got lost in the shuffle. So every so often Zoom decides that it wants you to validate who you are. And it did that. And on the text message went to Chris.
Okay, so that's
And-
something that you go to retrofit? Are there other?
No,
experts?
no, you don't need an expert. You just need,
A
the
person?
issue we have here is we share user accounts for different committees for meetings. So now we have an staff employee who will get the text message, and committee chairs will know who that person is. So if this happens again, we can reach out to that person.
Great.
say,
Are
"Hey,
there other things lurking in the
Yeah.
firmament?
I mean, that was just, I mean, I'll tell you, I left the company I was at 6 months ago, and every couple of weeks, I get some pinging on my phone from some state asking me to validate my user, and they need a PIN. And I call up and I say, hey, is somebody looking to pay taxes because I have a PIN that I need to give to somebody? You know, but it keeps coming to me.
Well, I guess to me, that's all administrative stuff.
Right, and these things, when people leave, things fall through the cracks, and the Zoom thing was one of the things. It was one incident that fell through the cracks.
So what is our action item? Is there an action item for us?
You know, my understanding was Retrofit was stepping up. If they can't supply user support, I can give you the name of 3 other firms that can do desktop support. But it sounds like they're taking care of it. You know, I thought they were very, very responsive with the firewall issue. And I know
That's their bread and butter though, Rob.
right. So
So we can't run hybrid meetings because we don't have anybody who knows how to use the technology. We need more tech support to do the general administrative kind of work that the town is using now.
So does it come in the form of we go out and look for a project manager, a company that can do project management?
I don't think it's that high level. I just think you need to find someone technically capable. Yeah,
Well,
probably there's somebody in the high school who can do it.
if you want a firm to set up the hybrid meetings, I can give you the name of somebody that can
Well,
come in and
we
set it up.
hired a firm to set up the technology, so I don't know why they couldn't help us.
The firm that Dave used to help with, it was 2 years ago. The firm that Dave, you talk about the firm that Dave hired, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll come up with it. All right. Well, that's an action item.
Okay. Sorry, Robin.
Well, I don't, you know, it's an action item. Who's taking the action? You know, we have, right, we have town meeting that is in high gear.
Yeah.
You know, we need to prioritize these things.
Yeah.
So, and you know, the most important thing is getting staff. You know, our new full-time town administrator can make sure that all this stuff happens. If it's a
So could our
priority,
interim ATA make a call?
I beg your pardon?
Can our interim ATA make a call? I mean, this is like finding, contacting someone. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not, arduous, weekly labor. I mean, we have people in positions.
Carl, is that something he can do?
I'm not clear on what the question is. What type of call?
To the firm that installed the technology to have someone come in and help us make it work.
Yes, I think it's a much more complicated question than just that.
Right, I don't think we have the right equipment. That's the issue.
It's an equipment issue, and the other with hybrid meetings is it's not just one hybrid meeting.
It needs to be the room in the selectman's former office, not the hookup in the townhouse.
Right, and we had a proposal. Wow, we had a proposal for the Great Hall. That was $100,000 solution.
Right, but I think you can get the screen in the selectmen's meeting room to work like on a Zoom call.
I did. I used it. I sat there in a meeting that everybody was on a couple of months ago.
Yes, you did. So I don't see what's required to make that functional.
Well,
The only thing that was required was Mark Galone, literally, as Carl just said, Mark Galone came from Park and Rec to do the 4 or 5 steps that required to turn the actual screen on. So that's just what Carl was alluding to.
And so there used to be.
We don't have that physical body. Mark happens to be that body, but we shouldn't rely upon Mark to do those types of tasks.
Correct. There used
Okay,
to be,
so
there used to
maybe-
be a job aid attached to the screen that told people how to do it.
Okay, so first of all, we need to figure out, does it work? So we have to find somebody who'll figure out, how do you turn it on? How do you hook up in a computer? How do you do a Zoom call? And then put instructions on the side.
Well, literally,
There's somebody
we know
in the
it works.
townhouse who can support people.
and the directions are actually right on that screen, right? There's I don't know if it's a QR code or whatever Dave left with us that you can call up the directions with your phone or print. I have them printed out.
So maybe it's just the staff training issue or.
Well, it's a board and committee training issue because we have
Well,
many
Yep,
boards
okay, good enough.
that are not staffed, right? That don't have staff necessarily assigned to them that meet.
Well, then we have to provide them with the means to be able to run those kinds of meetings.
Yeah, and I think that's the bigger question is how do you do that?
Give them a piece of paper with instructions.
That part we have available. We can do that. Yeah.
Well, maybe we do a couple of trainings.
Sounds like all of the above.
All right. So then have people taken a look at our next meeting is April 4th. I think, John, you wanted to add treasury management to this, so maybe.
Yeah, I just think it's
treasurer can come.
I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on it, Robin. I just want to, let people know that it's something that we do have a system of checks and balances in place. And I would like to know, when I'm asked the question, how much is at risk on a weekly basis with payroll over and above the amount, how the sweep works, and how Citizens, our current bank, makes the cash available. I know, as a director of all the other companies I'm a director of, I know there's a system in place, and I know from my firm how our treasury management standpoint works for rebalancing. I just would like to have that discussion very briefly in an open public setting so that we can be on record as to having, from a fiduciary standpoint, had the conversation, and that we're all aware of how our cash management, the system of checks and balances that are in place for our cash management work. I don't think it has to be anything more than that. Would any of you disagree?
No, just due diligence, and it's a good thing to know.
Well, I will see if Mark Waldman is available to come to your next meeting for that.
That would be great, Carl. Thank you.
And I would also stress, Carl, that it doesn't have to be the next meeting if Mark is unavailable, or there's a lot of agenda items with warrant articles on our next meeting. But however we can determine the best use of everybody's time, I'd like to do that.
Good. Thanks for that flexibility.
So, Carl, just a citizen had suggested, and it's probably not a bad idea, that we just put on the website that Dover was not impacted by any of the bank failures, right?
Bank failures, the current bank failures.
So then the agenda reminded me, Ruth's been barking about getting articles for the April
Newsletter.
news. I put together a template for an in-depth article on town meeting planning. And it included sort of a summary of where we have been, where we were in March. I've asked Carl to fill in how the open hearing went, but I also included in that template, I thought there should be a brief summary of particular warrant articles that could be highlighted in the April issue, ones that we think are of interest to the broader community. I have not gotten any, and I sent that out a week ago. I haven't gotten any feedback. So I can't so it's a question of which articles, and then which committee sponsor, which sponsors should write just a very brief synopsis of the article, so that in April, we have a town meeting planning in-depth session. There's an articulation of articles of interest with a brief explanation. So that's got to have to get pulled together over the next week.
I would use Melissa Herman's agenda from open hearing as the template. So in the agenda for open hearing, the way open hearing was done is they categorized certain warrant articles. They lumped the ones that had no financial impact together.
Right.
So we didn't focus on those.
Yeah.
And then they had the school committees present. So I would ask the school committee, because that's 70% of our budget.
Yep.
They had the planning board presented their 2 articles. They presented the ADU and the floodplain.
Yep.
And they have really great presentations. And I know they did an in-depth report. Capital budgets presented. So, I could work with the chair of capital budgets. And am I missing anybody, Carl? I would suggest that we give the fire an opportunity to maybe write a blurb about the fire truck.
Yeah.
And I'm going to meet with Kevin tomorrow.
Yep.
So I will ask Kevin to kind of put a blurb together about Claybrook.
Right.
How about that?
That's fine, but who's going to pull it together?
Well, the other, I'll just add, and partially to answer that question, Ruth had suggested doing a special issue just on town meeting.
This is intended to answer that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great sense, and we might want to do maybe a couple of issues, so that we, rather than have one really long newsletter, maybe do one a week for the next 4 weeks, and
That's a
do some on finances, one on just the planning ones, on the capital, the key capital items, and sort of stage it that way. and not try to jam it into the regular newsletter.
Right, so,
Sounds good.
yeah, so maybe that's what we do, just put a teaser in this newsletter and say every week we are gonna be sending out a digital newsletter that's dedicated to certain warrant articles. So then the planning board could do one on theirs, you know.
Well, I owe Ruth a call, so I'll contact her tomorrow and run this by her and then see if we can set up a schedule.
Keep it simple.
And-
Yeah.
And yeah, and then also give folks enough lead time to, even something simple takes some thinking. 'Cause
It
the
absolutely
simpler it
does.
is, the simpler it is, the harder it is to
The
write.
simpler it is, you took the words right out of my mouth, the simpler it is, the harder it is to actually put it together. And Carl, what has our new communication company been doing to help us on these matters?
They've been asking me when can they start, and I actually have a call with them tomorrow around noontime.
And
Well,
what?
this would be a great thing for them to take over. If we just have the
Absolutely.
schedule, let's give it to them.
Yeah, that's my thinking exactly, that this is something that they should literally have both hands wrapped around and helping us as soon as possible, as in yesterday.
Sure.
Sorry, Robin. Thank you.
All right. So Carl, it's your updates.
Yep. So let's do this again. Share screen. All right. So a couple of things that are really important here. So the first, under recruitment, treasure collector. So we have been interviewing for this position. And we, as Mark Waldman, our interim treasurer collector, Kathy LaPlante, our town accountant, myself, and on at least a couple of the candidates, Rick Reed, our interim HR director. And we have, we believe, a terrific candidate that we would like to offer the position to. And I am so relieved that we have, which you believe, such a quality candidate, but also very concerned that we not lose him to some of the other communities that are recruiting at the same time. So I just wanted to talk to the board about if you have, if you want to interview, how you want to handle it. You know, I know Chris had a procedure with you that he would bring it forward and you had 15 days to either call a meeting and do whatever. I would really not want to wait 15 days in this particular case. So I'm just looking for how you want to handle moving forward with this particular candidate.
So
What do you recommend?
I would like to interview the person. I say we interview the person next week, and we need to make time.
I'd say we interview him this weekend.
That's an option too.
Are you thinking individually or as a posted meeting?
No, individually. That's how we've done it before. So it's not a meeting.
Would that work, Carl?
I'd have to reach out to him and see if.
What's plan B?
And we've done it. We've done it one after the other. Like it's been a revolving door at times. Like I went after Bob and Bob went after John. So
I would also say that if I would want to be as accommodating as possible and do it as quickly as possible, based upon what you said, Carl. I would make it, if Robin, you know, if it, for example, if it could only be two of us,
right, that's fine.
then that'd be fine. And if it was literally, if it could only be just one of us, then I would be fine with that as well, because I would rather expedite it and get to the point where we would be comfortable making an offer and make the offer and do it quickly.
Right.
And what
Particularly
is-
since you all think this person is such a strong candidate.
What is your general, each of you, your general availability over the next 5 days?
Well, I would like to get it done quicker if we can. It's not ideal, but even if it's just via Zoom, that some of the interviews can happen, I say we do that. I would suggest that you get this individual's availability, and I am willing to tailor my schedule to it. And as John said before, if we can't, if only 2 out of the 3 of us can do it, that's what we need to do, because I agree, we don't want to lose this candidate.
So
If the
is
candidate's
Zoom-
available tomorrow, I could do it after 3.
Yeah, that's.
And in Zoom, yes, we could do it by Zoom.
Yeah,
So
we could
Zoom
do
is
it by
acceptable,
Zoom too,
okay.
right?
Okay, so let me reach out to him tomorrow and find out about his availability over the next few days. Great. So the next one I want to bring on the list is something new, highlighted in green, of the planning director's position. So we were contacted by Carol Lisbon a little over a week ago saying our interim planning director is reaching the maximum amount she can work as a retiree towards the end of May. So she asked if we would start that recruitment again for the planning director's position. So I put that on Rick Reed's to-do list. So that's going to have to take a priority for him.
So Carl, in my opinion, the assistant town administrator is a priority as well. Can we just hire a search firm to do some of these? I mean, Bernie's been able to kind of turn this around in a month. Can we do the same thing?
To what, Robin?
For an assistant town administrator, do a search, get a search firm.
So the short answer is yes.
Because we need people.
No,
And
I know. The short answer is yes, we could. So there's a couple of things with that particular position. Since it's a new position, because we split the position right into 2,
Right.
we have to create 2 new job descriptions, one for HR director and one for assistant town administrator, and get both of those approved by the personnel board. It's hard to say which is a higher priority, but I know I can't keep Rick forever either, and Rick's been doing the HR stuff. So, and I happen to have at least one good candidate who I've been talking to on the HR piece. You could flip the coin, but we were trying to move first on the HR position because, again, I know I'm going to lose Rick at some point.
We just need to move faster getting.
Yeah,
doing this recruiting.
it's just a matter of bandwidth. It's not anything.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying if Rick doesn't have the bandwidth because he's doing everything else to write the job descriptions, can we get that HR firm to write the job descriptions and then just
Yeah, let me talk to Rick about that.
I mean, don't we have an ATA job description that we just need to modify?
We do.
Yes.
We need to modify the 2 of them and, take the existing ATA one and basically split it into 2 positions. But let me, again, let me talk to Rick about maybe using the outside firm that was doing some personnel work for us.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
this is like a couple of hours worth of work.
Okay, good suggestion.
All right.
And I think what else I had. I had raised with you on number 13 on the municipal broadband implementation that we have, which we have a grant for, but there's been a delay in getting the materials.
Supply
Right.
chain issues?
Yeah, supply chain issues. Well, you know, everybody uses that now. I'm not sure, but anyway, I was able to get an extension from the state on the grant for 6 months, so that was good. We talked about 27, the roll-off vehicle. We've already talked about that, the work that's underway, and you approved the Collins Center contract, which was great. And number 32, town communications, we talked about primarily about putting money in the budget for that for next year. So that's it. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, and we're gonna get the communications firm to do the town meeting
Yeah, the roof special issue.
communication.
Yeah, I'll talk, when I talk to them tomorrow, I'll have that discussion.
They have a project.
They have a project.
A lot of projects.
All right. So the next item of business is the consent agenda, and it's to approve 2023 one-day special liquor licenses for March 23rd, April 27th, May 19th, and June 11th.
You know, Robin, this is graduation season and we didn't get invited to a single graduation party.
I think it's early, John. There's time.
I'm hoping. I move we approve consent agenda
As
as
presented.
presented.
Second. All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
I, John Jeffries.
All right. And that is
Somebody
it.
needs to move for adjournment. It's almost 9 o'clock.
Right. I was going to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow to everyone.
Oh, I'm going to have to wear green. All in
Yes.
favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob
Aye.
Springett.
I, John Jeffries.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night, all.